Greetings, people who might be thinking they're having a bad dream. Well, don't feel bad. I feel the same way. So, after I got done presenting my musical ideas, I switched over to grammar and I was explaining to my audience that over the years I've done extensive study on many grammar topics, many grammar concepts, and one of them was a study of the word that. You might have seen a few of those videos. And in that study, I discovered that the word that actually has 5 grammatical functions. One of those functions I call a distinction indicator. Now, to get to the distinction indicator itself, I had to go through the concepts of abstract proform, the concept of associator, and then I finally got to the actual distinction indicator. Now, a proform is a word or lexical unit that derives its meaning through reference to some other part of the context, be it a thought, sentence, or discourse in which it occurs. A proform stands in for reasonable implied content. Abstract. Abstract comes from the Latin word abstrahere, meaning to draw away. It's something that summarizes or concentrates the essentials of a larger thing or several things. Distinction indicator realization. To realize the distinction indicator as the most refined, precise form of the 4th function of the word that, we must first understand the concept of abstract proform. Okay, we have to first understand what this is all about to see if we actually really have a distinction indicator. Now let's look at an example. Let's see how we get what we're searching for. The plant died. That's a genuine clause. You'd call it an independent clause. The plant was a rose. That's another genuine clause, or you'd call it independent clause. Now the second step is the plant died, all right, and the plant was a rose. But we're taking out the period, and we're taking out 2 words, the plant. So that leaves the plant died, and that's synthetic. That's a dependent clause. That's something that must be connected to something else or it won't work. And here we're left with was a rose, which is synthetic also. It's not complete. It has to be attached to something. So we deleted punctuation and 2 words. Now we insert the word that. And that's why we did the study in the first place. The plant that died was a rose. This is the net result of this deletion here and this insertion. Now we have a genuine clause, but it's somewhat elliptical because we know in our minds that something's missing, something was omitted. Now on this level here, we have the plant that died was a rose. So we have the complete sentence. It's a genuine clause. It's an independent clause, but it has the flavor of being elliptical because we know we had a transformation here. We had a deletion and an insertion. So we're left with the plant that died was a rose, and now we know that this word that is our distinction indicator. Okay, that's all it is. It's not a relative pronoun. It's not a relativizer or any of those other stupid words that people assign to it. It is not that. Okay, so we have the plant that died was a rose. Now, the reason why we have a distinction phrase here is because we have our distinction indicator. Okay, and we showed how we got that. Now we have kind of a predicate situation here in this phrase. That died. That is not a pronoun. That died is our distinction phrase because for our phrase we have no subject. Now down here we have a different sentence. The plant that he purchased was a rose. Okay, we have our distinction indicator. We made that clear. But now we have kind of a subject element in our little clause here, and we have kind of a predicate element. We have he purchased. So here we have a distinction clause, and here we had only a phrase. There was no subject here. Now, when you read other people's grammar books and you go on their websites and such, you'll hear Both of these referred to as relative clauses. Well, first of all, that's a crappy name. And second of all, in most cases, those relative clauses aren't actually clauses, they are phrases. So it's a really crappy name, relative clause. It's just crappy. So when we think about the abstract proform, we say, well, does this goofy guy on the internet, he's telling us this stuff, but is it true? Abstract, something that summarizes or concentrates the essentials of a larger thing or several things. Well, do we really have that? Well, we had the plant died. We have omissions here, punctuation, words, was a rose. We had two synthetic clauses resulting from our deletion, okay? But we had an insertion here of the word that. So did we summarize, did we concentrate the essentials of a larger thing into this? Yes, we did. You see? See, we're qualified. Something that summarizes or concentrates the essentials of a larger thing, and that's this. All right, we did that. We summarized, we concentrated, and we came up with this beautiful thing called the distinction indicator. I know, I'm sorry, I got to stop hitting the wrong buttons. Observation. We see clearly that is not functioning as an ordinary pronoun. That is not a relative pronoun. That is almost naturally standing in for words and punctuation. On the surface level, that would be considered as a function word. On the abstract level, however, the word hints at being a bearer of content. As such, it could conceivably be considered a grammatical hybrid. That's something to think about if you want to study it further. That has established its grammatical role. Now it can function precisely as an associator, if you want to call it that, or a distinction indicator. All right? Now, while we're at it, let's look at one of my other innovations, the noun clause indicator. All right? That's function number 5 for the word that. The noun clause indicator, that, is likewise realized through the application of the abstract proform concept. Okay, let's look at this sentence on the first level. The problem is this, colon, we are quarantined. Okay, so here we have a synthetic clause, because when you have the colon here, when you add that, this can't stand by itself. Okay, genuine clause, we are quarantined, that can stand by itself. Okay, so here's our original sentence. Now, we delete. The problem is, okay, we delete the word this and the colon, and we're left with we are quarantined. Now that's genuine or independent, that can stand by itself, but now you see this side can't stand by itself, all right? So we insert the word that, but the word that is not a distinction indicator here. It's a noun clause indicator. The problem is that. Now that tells us that a noun clause is coming. We are quarantined. All right? So we started out with a synthetic clause combined with a genuine, and then we still have synthetic during our deletion process with genuine. Now we have a genuine clause, but there's a somewhat elliptical feel to it because we know that something was removed, it was omitted. The problem is that we are quarantined. So we have our sentence, and the final version would be the problem is that we are quarantined. And that's a common structure that you'll see in sentences, and you're used to it. But actually, it is actually genuine. It can stand alone as an independent clause, but it has kind of a feel, kind of a flavor of the elliptical because something was removed. And deep down in our minds, whether we're conscious of it or not, our brains know what's going on. So that's what happened there. Now, let's look at that sentence from a grammatical standpoint. In other words, something you might find in school. In other words, a teacher might be showing you how sentences are formed, and they're showing you the traditional setup. In other words, the setup that you find in grammar books or on websites. Everybody's teaching grammar on the internet. So you have sentence divisions. We have the problem, is that we are quarantined. So the subject, the problem, is here, right? The predicate is over here. So we have two different divisions. That's plain and clear, right? Now, this particular setup is very, very common. Subject predicate is very, very basic. But let's get just a little bit more complex. You have sentence patterns, and there are 5 basic patterns in American English grammar. And this is one of them. This is a very common one. The problem, right, that would be your subject, is your verb, and that we are quarantined would be your subject complement. So this is one of 5 basic patterns. Now the beauty of this pattern is you can switch things around. You can put this clause here, right, in the front of the sentence at the head, and you have your verb, and then your subject complement would be what was your subject in this sentence. See, now it's your subject complement. So you see, that can be flipped. That's a beautiful thing. Now, when we think of subject function elements, or you would say possibly parts of speech in the traditional sense, you have the problem. Okay, that's a noun phrase, but it's functioning basically as a single noun. You have your verb here is, all by itself. Then you have that we are quarantined, which we know is a noun clause, but it's functioning as a single noun. Okay, noun is noun. The problem is that we are quarantined. So now you see the different levels. You have your sentence from the perspective of divisions, all right? You got your 2 sides here, 2 parts. Then you got your patterns. There's 4 others, which I won't get into. You can find that in your grammar books. This particular pattern is switchable, all right? Oh, this might be called, the subject complement, sometimes called a predicate noun. I just call it subject complement. That's the more contemporary term. So now you have the noun clause and you have the noun clause indicator. You see it clearly because I've taught it in my videos, but now you see here when you analyze and you just go deeper and deeper, you get to the point where all you're left with is your noun clause indicator. And we got that because we started out with the idea of the abstract proform. Okay, that's how we got it. And you see it's not a relative pronoun at all, not at all. And then you see we have a clause here. We are quarantined. And we are quarantined by itself is genuine. It's independent. It can stand by itself. But when you put this word in the head, in the front, and you attach it to this, it's now a synthetic clause, and it can't stand by itself. It has to be attached to something. Okay, and that's my little speech on the abstract proform and how it affects the brings about the distinction indicator and the noun clause indicator. I hope I didn't speak poorly and make too many boo-boos. So thanks for being incredibly patient, and we'll see what happens in the next video. Good night.